Hey guys, welcome back to a new episode of DevDrawer. Today we're going to be going over how to create custom meta boxes to display inside of our custom post types inside of our custom plugin and have it visible on the front end. So before we get into creating our custom meta boxes, if you haven't subscribed to the channel and you like these kind of videos, this is actually I think the fourth video of this series, but I think we're up to 50, a little over 50 videos for right now. So if you haven't subscribed and you like these, definitely hit the thumbs up and hit the bell notification if you want to hear whenever I'm making new videos. But let's go ahead and get started into it. So the first thing we want to do is I'm going to switch over and go into the administration of this. Let's go here, and then we're just going to open up our employee custom post type and just open up one of the random employees. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add some custom options that you can fill out. Typically for an employee, you might want to know the hire date. You might want to know their title. So I'm going to go ahead and start creating the code in order to create a meta box down here. So the first thing we need to do is inside of our CPT file that we have here, I'm just going to add another function at the bottom of it. And we're just going to say this one is to create custom meta boxes. And then this function, we're going to actually register the meta for the employees custom post type. So we're going to do function, and then we're going to name it employees register meta. And that's going to be a function for us. So inside of this, we want to add a meta box. So we're going to use the function for WordPress add meta box, and then we're going to pass over the ID of the box. We want to make this unique for the employees in case we wanted to have multiple meta boxes, meta box sections. We could create multiple meta box sections here, but so they each need to have their own individual ID. So we're going to do employee information because this is going to be the employee information, and then we're also going to pass over the title employee information, and then finally we're going to create a callback function that we're going to reference here. So now let's do employees meta callback, and we want it to be in the employees custom post type. So the employees custom post type there, and then we need to finally do an add action. And this is going to be add meta boxes, and then we're going to call that function that we have right here. So we're going to do employees register meta. If I could copy that, just copy it and paste it in here. And now if we go back to our page over here, we should be able to refresh it, and we can see that employee information is now being created, but there's no functionality being built into it. So we need to add some functionality of what it's actually going to be calling back. And let me just verify that I have that correct. Employee meta box, employees. Yep. All right. So now let's do the callback, which is going to be this function here. We're going to create this function, and that's going to link off to a page. So we're going to pass the post information, and then this function right now we can just say something like echo test, and if we go back over here and refresh, this section will now have a test in it. What we want to have inside of that section is actually like a form. So what we're going to do on this side is we're going to reference a file that's going to actually have that form, and the reason why I'm doing this is because it's a little bit easier to kind of keep everything where it needs to go and kind of put in its place. So we're going to do include, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do include plugin directory path, so that we're using our plugin directory, and then we're going to pass the file so it references where it's currently at, and then we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to call it CMB for custom meta box, and then employees.php. So that means over here we need to create a new folder inside of our admin called CMB, and then we need to create a new file inside of our admin called employees.php. So now we have this file that we can reference to actually create the form. So whenever we created this meta box, we set the meta box ID as employee information. So I'm going to copy that, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to create a div, the class of employee information. And then inside of this div is where we're going to add the meta fields that go with it. So let's first create a p tag, and let's do class equals meta options field. And this is just some generic styling that's going to be used using like a combination of WordPress's administration styling as well as some custom styling we're actually going to put into this. But it'll make more sense whenever we get to that part. So we have that, and now let's go ahead and create a label for we're going to have our first field is going to be called employee title, and let's just say title here, and then we're going to create an input field. So input ID equals employee title, and then we want to make it a text box, so we're going to do type text. We're going to pass the name of employee title, or employee title as well. And then we want to pass a value, which we'll just leave blank for now. And then that's all we need for this. So now if we go back over to our WordPress page and refresh it, now we have a title box with a input. So if we type in something here, let's do test, and we hit update, nothing's going to happen because, I mean, it actually saves it. It's just that we don't have the value reflecting that saved value. So inside of this value text box over here, we need to put in the following. So we need to echo out, so PHP echo, and then we're going to escape the attributes, so escape ATTR, and then we're going to get post meta, which is a function for WordPress. We're going to get the ID, so we're grabbing the correct post ID, and then we're going to actually get the employee title meta box, and then we're going to return that value as true. Then we just close that out and close our PHP. So let me see, title. Okay, so now if we refresh, it should say test there, or whatever I put into it. Let me just make sure. Let me close this so I can actually see what I'm doing. So employee title, text, the name is employee title. We are echoing, we're escaping the attribute, we're getting the post meta, we're getting the ID, we're passing employee title. Alright, so now let me come over here and let's just try this again. Maybe it just needs to be updated. Oh, that's because I don't actually have the functionality in there to save it yet. But this will come into play whenever we actually get to the point where we're saving the information that's being sent. For right now, it's not actually saving anything, but it will be visible once we add in the save. So let's go ahead and add our second field, and then we'll get into the save part of it. So I'm just going to copy over this, and everything's going to be the same except for the values or what we're trying to pull. So this is going to be hire date, and we're going to make this be hire date. Now with this as a type text, what we want to make it is a type date, because it'll WordPress will actually put in a date selector box there. So let's do hire date, and then actually, you know what, let me just go ahead and copy this so I ain't got to rewrite it twice. So we're going to do employee hire date, and then we want to also grab that value for employee hire date. Okay, so now we have two boxes here, but I'm not loving the way that they look. So we're going to add in a little bit of styling to make this work a little bit better. And I'm just going to add the styling directly in here. You can add it to a administrative CSS file, but just to make it easier for this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do it here. So we're going to do employee, EMPLOY, employee information, and then we're going to use display grid. We want to do one full length row. So let's do grid template columns. We're going to do max content 1 FR, and then we're going to do grid row gap, and we're just going to give it a, let's give it like 1 REM. Grid row gap, and then we're going to do get grid row, nope, grid column gap, and let's make this 1.5 rem. Okay, so that should give us the overall structure. And then we're going to, we have this class here that we added as a field, so we're going to call that now. So let's do employee information dot field, and then we're just going to make this do display contents. And now if we refresh the page, there we go, that's a lot cleaner looking. And if we select this, we can either insert this manually, or we can click over here and choose a date and it'll fill it in for us. Okay, so now we have the functional display of it, so now we need to make it where it actually saves. So we're going to switch back over to our CPTs, and we're going to create another function down here. And let me just add the comment, so save custom meta boxes. And then let's see that function, we're going to do employees save meta box. And I'm just going to use all underscores just to make it work out better. And then we also want to pass the post ID that's being sent over. So post ID. Okay, so first thing you want to do is check and see if WordPress is auto-saving it for you. If it's auto-saving for you, then you can you want to make sure that it's updating the correct fields. So let's do if defined doing autosave, and this is basically going to check just to see if it's actually in the process of doing an autosave. And if it's actually doing it, so autosave, so if defined doing autosave and doing autosave, we want to just return nothing because we don't need it to go any further than that. It's just doing an autosave. Let's see, now we need to check to see if the parent ID is, for the post revisions inside of the database, we need to make sure that it's being attributed to the correct post. So we're going to select if parent ID equals WP is post revision, and then we're going to pass in the post underscore ID. And if it is, then we're going to just keep that, we're going to make the post ID equal to the parent ID. Now I know this is a little bit confusing, it's a lot of stuff that's kind of going on, but this is essentially just checking to make sure that it's not adding a whole bunch of fields to your database, it's actually overriding or auto-saving whatever it needs to, and it's attributing it to the correct post and post parent and stuff like that. Okay, so now we actually get into the saving part of this. So we're going to define our fields. So we're going to create an array called fields, and then inside of this we're going to do employee title because that's what we called it in the form, and then we're going to do employee hire date, and then we can go ahead and close that out. And now we're going to do for each fields as field, for each field as field, and then we're going to do an if statement. If array key exists, ISTS, if array key exists, and it's going to be this field, which is the employee title or an employee hire date. Basically what this is going to be doing is looking through to see if this metadata already exists. If it does, then it'll update it. If it doesn't, then it'll save it. Okay, so if the array key exists for this field and it's grabbing information from the post, we want it to then update post meta, and then we're going to pass in the post ID, we're going to pass in the field itself, and then we're going to sanitize text field, and then we're going to actually post in or bring over the post and then the field. So the post field, and then let's do end if, and in for each. Okay, so I think that should do it. So let's go ahead and do our add action. Our add action, we're going to do save post, and then we're going to do employees save meta box, because that's what we call the function. Okay, so now that should allow us to save whatever we put inside of this. So let's do title 2, and then let's select the hire date of yesterday. I did not save it. Okay, let me read through the code just real quick. If array exists, update post meta, sanitize. Oh, that's because we're passing a hard-coded field. What we actually need to do here is pass the variable field. Okay, so now let's try this again. So refresh, and we're going to do title 2, update. All right, so there we go. So yeah, it was just because I was passing a hard-coded variable from the post that didn't actually exist. It actually has to be based off of this field that's being set here. Okay, so then we should be able to also update this to the 25th. Hit update. All right, so now we have variables that are being stored inside of our custom post type. This is our custom meta box, and we can create additional meta boxes just like this. It doesn't have to be the same meta box. It could be a completely different div directly underneath it, and you would essentially just go through the same process again. So now if we click on this employee 2 and we go to view it, let me get rid of some of this stuff. So now we're on employee 2. It currently doesn't display that information. So what I wanted to do is display the information about this employee. And the way that you do that is fairly simple. Let's open up our single employees page. And then once we've got the content, so we're going to, let's come up here below the post, and we're going to create a variable called title just to kind of keep it organized. And then we're going to recreate exactly what we used here, because this is essentially displaying that value. We're going to display it here as well. Now that we have this value displayed, get rid of the echo, we can use this as the to actually get out a title. So let's do echo, and we're just going to say title, and then we're going to echo out that title. And now if we come back over here and refresh, we should see title 2, whereas if we go to, I believe, test employee 1, title is blank. So we can see that it's working because we haven't added anything to test employee 1. So we're going to do the same thing here with the date. What did we call it? That was the hire date. So this is going to be hire date, and then we're going to change this also to hire_date. Then one more. Let's go ahead and put a break tag in between them, and we're going to do this one as hire date, and finally just pass over that value there. Now what you're going to see is the date doesn't look formatted the way we want it to, because it's coming straight out of the way WordPress stores it. So even though on the editor itself it's in the correct format, whenever it goes to store it into the database, it's not storing it into the database in the format that we want it to be stored in. So on this hire date part, what we need to do is to format the date variable that's being pushed over using some standard PHP code. So we're going to do date, and then we're going to push over how we want it to look. So we're going to do month, day, and then 4-digit year. And then we're going to convert this string to time, without the underscore, string to time, and then we're going to pass it there. So now it should reflect over here the same way it does in the administration. So 1/25/2020 with the slash on it, same as is over here. So I think that is it on how to display the data, how to create your meta box. Let me see, what else can I show you guys? So what about this? We have this additional information that's being pushed over. So I want it to display and be sortable when they were hired and what their title is. So I'm going to go back over to my CPTs, and I'm going to create a new function down here. So let's say we're going to create a function to add new columns to custom post type, and then underneath that we're going to create a filter. So add filter, and we're going to there's a specific way that you need to, whenever you go to create these filters for your columns, there's a specific way that you need to modify them in order to make them where WordPress actually understands what you're trying to do. So, and I'll get to that point when we get there. So we're going to do manage underscore employees post columns. So the manage employees post column, the employees is the custom post type. Everything else that you see here has to be here. This would actually reflect what your custom post type, I guess the name of it is, or the permalink structure is. Your actual custom post type, what the post type name is going to go here. But the rest of it has to be the same. Okay? And then we're going to create a function. So let's say set custom edit employees columns. And you can name this function whatever you want to. Just this kind of makes sense to me. Close that again so it's not wrapping. So set custom edit employees columns, and then that's all we need to do for our filter. Underneath the filter, we're actually going to create that function. So we're going to create this function, and we're going to pass in the existing columns array, and then we're going to manipulate that array. So if you look over here, I don't necessarily like how the categories and tags are displaying here. You can keep them if you want. Considering we're not really using them, I just kind of put them as part of the post type so you can see how it's done. I'm going to go ahead and remove these. So it's just an array, so we're just going to unset some values from it. So unset columns, and that needs a $sign. So unset columns categories. And then we're going to unset columns, and then I believe this one is tags. So now we've successfully removed those two columns. So if we refresh over here, we're not calling it yet. Yep. So let's do return columns. So now it's actually pushing it back out. So it makes the changes and then pushes it back out, which is still not working. Make sure I'm calling the correct function. So we got our add filter, manage employees, post columns, set custom edit employees columns. That's using this function. All right, well, I guess we'll figure out what's happening in just a second. So let's go ahead and restructure our columns. Columns equals array, and inside of this array there's if you want to keep the checkbox, which you can see over here, this little checkbox, you have to add that back to the array. If you don't, it doesn't stay there, but it's basically something like this: CB equals CB, and then we're going to do title equals title, and I forgot to put quotes, single quotes around this. And then we're going to pass in two more different variables that we want to be able to see. So we're going to do employee title, and then this one's going to equal employee title, and then we're going to do employee hire date, and this one's just going to equal hire date. And then finally we're going to pass the date back in. So date. Okay, so let's close that out and see, set custom edit employees columns, manage employees post columns. I'm wondering if that post needs to be there. Post, let's see if that works. Hey, there we go. Alright, so we have these, we were able to reset it, and I misspelled that. If my spelling was right, wouldn't have so many issues. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. It's just because I left the S off here, and obviously I put two M's here. So my bad, that was a spelling issue. so go fix that now. But this is the way you need to have it structured. So manage post columns, and then you need to have your whatever the custom post slug is, the post type slug is. And just so I can make sure that the post needs to be there, if I click on this, okay, so it didn't affect the post. Okay, so we have employee title, hire date, and date, but currently there's no information that's being submitted to any of those. So we're going to hold on, let me get rid of this one for a second. I want to see something, and I closed out of it, so let's open that back up. And hire date, it's not displaying the date the way that I need it to, so let me just make sure that that's correct name for it. So it is ID date. Oh, data. Man, my spelling is terrible today. Okay, so that should display the date. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Alright, let's see if I can do the rest of this with no spelling issues. I'm going to have to get me a better dictionary, or, you know, not so fat fingers. See if that helps next time. Alright, so now we have the columns created. Now we need to actually add information to those columns. So we're going to do another add action. And then again, this is something that needs to be very specific or else it won't work, which I've demonstrated multiple times. So we're going to do manage employees posts with an S custom column, and this also needs to be an underscore, custom underscore column. And then we're going to pass in another function, so custom employees column, and then we're going to have it in the ordered position of 10 2, and you can put in whatever numbers you want to there. If you go to add action and then manage, or add a column inside of WordPress's development tools, you'll be able to see what those stand for. But it's basically just positioning for us. Okay, so let's do create our function, which is called custom employees column, and then we're going to pass in the column as well as the post ID. And then inside of this function, we're going to create a switch statement. So PHP switch statement is kind of like a if this, then do this. But instead of having to do if, you're just passing a variable and then choosing what to do based on that variable. So we're going to pass the column to it. And inside of this, the first case that we're going to be looking for is the employee title. And then this is going to be where we actually echo out the employee hire date. So if I go back over here, I'm going to just copy this because it's essentially the same thing. Anytime you want to echo out a meta, it's essentially the same thing. Just not going to use the escape attributes. So we're just going to replace this and put echo, and then close that out. And that should be it for that one. So let's go ahead and break out of this routine and then create our other case, which is going to be employee hire date. And these case statements actually match with what we called it here, which is also again what we're calling it in the whenever we go to create that form, just to kind of keep everything standardized for us. Okay, let's grab this because we're going to use the same thing, and then we're also going to display it in the human readable format again. So let's create a date variable and have it equal to employee hire date. And then finally, if the date is not equal to null, that's where we're going to echo out the date. And the reason why I'm doing this is because if you don't, it's going to try to pass this formatting to a blank date, which is essentially going to give you a date in the 1970s because the date doesn't exist. And then this is essentially the same thing that we did whenever we did it on the single page as well. and let's do end if. So basically what this is going to do is if it's going to grab the date. If the date's not null, it's going to echo out the date in the format we want it to, or else it's just going to be blank. And then break that out. So now if we refresh, we see that test employee 2 has the employee title of title 2, and here's the date. So let me just show you what this looks like if we don't take away that date. It's going to display a date in the 70s. So 1/1/1970. So we want to make sure that it's not trying to convert a date that doesn't exist into a date. Whereas this one right here, it won't do anything. It just won't display anything like it is over here. But since we were formatting a date specifically, we want to make sure that it's grabbing the correct date. And if it doesn't have one, it just removes it. So one thing we can't do here is, like over here, we have this, we can sort these. What I want to do is sort these as well, so we can have it where we can sort by their hire date, get more information about them that way. All right, so let's add another function down here. We're going to say this is to sort the columns, and then we're going to add another filter. So add filter, and again, this is very specific how you need to type it out. So manage edit dash employees underscore sortable columns. Again, that's WordPress, not me, but that's exactly how you need to have it done. And then this is what you need in order to pass on your custom post type. And then we're going to create a function. We're just going to call it employees sortable columns. Then we're going to end that. And now we're actually going to create this function here. So let's create function employee sortable column, and then columns, and let's create what we're going to do for the actual column. So essentially we're just going to call those columns that we had created up here, we're just going to call them again down here to make sure that WordPress knows that they're supposed to be sortable. So let's do columns, because we're using the same array, and then employee title equals employee title, and I'm just going to copy this and paste that for hire date, and then again hire date. Alright, so now if we refresh, valid arguments applied for each. Okay, so something's wrong with the code, so let me see, what am I doing here? Manage underscore edit employees sortable columns, employee sortable columns, function employee sortable columns, passing the column. Oh, we got to return it. So return columns. All right, so that should take care of that error for us. All right, so now these are sortable. So if we want to, we can sort these however they are. Obviously, there's no information in there and it needs to be sorted by, but we have the ability to sort it now. Okay, well, I think that is it for this video. What we went over today is basically just creating these custom meta boxes and allowing them to be visible on the front end, and then being able to sort by them and display them in the column structure and kind of manipulate these columns in the back end. So if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up and let me know that you liked it. If you have questions or comments, definitely leave me a comment below and I'll try to address it however I can. Thanks for watching, and I guess I will talk to you later.